No,
hear
he
him
has to,
from.
you have to go on. You have to go on that plug.
Yeah, you have to go on that plug.
Oh,
Okay.
Take one
Yeah.
if you need to.
Unplug him.
be here, your guest.
Cool.
Max. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hear.
See, Ahmed,
Loud and clear.
I can't hear him even with headphones.
No, because you can't hear him if you're plugged into this one. You can only hear him if you're plugged into the board.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
50
I don't want my headphones.
Oh no.
I hate
Oh, I see. You don't
Wait,
like wearing
wait, wait.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Welcome. You're listening to Upstart Live. I'm Ahmed Yusuf.
And I'm Lisa Burke. Each week we tackle current affairs, news, politics, sports, and today we have another big scoop from Ahmed.
Yeah, and we've got an exclusive interview with the uncle of Miss Zuleika Du, who died in police custody 2 years ago.
Of at least some sort, because she was treated so badly, mistreated and neglected and deprived of her liberty by so many people on so many levels, and somebody has to be held accountable.
I'm excited for that story. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it is. It was really good. He very emotional. He's been traveling for 2 years straight around Australia to make noise and make the current inquiry that's happened a possibility. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we'll get to that in a few minutes, but first we have news headlines with Alana.
Hey guys, there's been a lot happening in the week that was, most notably the leak of 11.5 million documents from the Panama-based law firm Mossack Fonseca. The documents were leaked to the German Daily News, which shared them with Washington-based International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, The Guardian, the BBC and other media organisations. The release of papers has already seen the retirement of Iceland's Prime Minister, as well as multiple other politicians and figureheads under scrutiny for their newly discovered offshore accounts. South Australia-based steelmaker and mining group Aerium was placed into voluntary administration on Thursday, threatening 1,000 jobs in Whyalla, South Australia. This also put at risk another 7,000 jobs across the country. The company is in debt by more than $4 billion and owes out $2.8 billion to lenders, $1 billion to suppliers, and about $500 million to staff. Earlier this week, South Australian Treasurer Tom Koutsotonis ruled out a state government takeover of the steelworks, but said governments would work with the banks and Aerium to find a solution. The Australian female cricket team, Sun Stars, who recently lost the ICC World T20 final in India, will now be eligible to earn around $100,000 a year. This is in comparison to Steve Smith, captain of the Australian men's team, and a handful of other top-ranked earned male players announced on the contract list last week, who earn over $2 million a season. The Weekend Australian revealed in March that Cricket Australia would almost double the female player payment pool from $2.36 million to $4.23 million over the next 12 months. Cricket Australia CEO James Sutherland congratulated the women on the pay rise and on their field successes during the year. Mr. Sutherland said in a recent statement, "Cricket is a sport for all Australians, and Cricket Australia will continue to invest heavily in the women's game in the coming years." A 6-year-old Perth boy will be given chemotherapy for a brain tumour, despite his parents' plea to not let him become, quote, a lab rat. The boy, who was diagnosed with cancer last December, was unable to start chemotherapy treatment due to his parents' want of a more palliative care approach. The boy's mother said she had watched her mother and stepmother die from cancer despite undergoing radiation therapy. Doctors who have recently intervened on the situation say the boy could die within months without treatment. He was given a 30% chance of surviving for 5 years with chemo and 50% chance with both chemo and radiotherapy. The doctor from Princess Margaret Hospital took legal action upon the refusal of treatment from the boy's parents. In one of many firsts, the courts have overruled the parents with the boy's treatment to begin shortly. And that's a wrap-up of the news.
Thanks for that, for the news update, Alana. Like, even, the Panama Papers thing's been going really crazy. Have you? I don't know if anyone's seen that interview the Prime Minister of Iceland had with one of the media organizations. He stormed out after a few questions.
Yeah,
and
he couldn't handle it.
it was too much heat, I guess.
He just started speaking in Icelandic. It went from English to Icelandic, and so the new reporters were just like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, and also what kind of well, it didn't really shock me. FIFA, the
Yeah,
FIFA president
that's
was
not
also implicated, and FIFA was trying to, stop being so corrupt. And as soon as next kind of leak happened,
Yeah,
oh,
it was shocking. But it's amazing that, like, even it coming under Australia, the only thing that's happening with Australian is that Wilson Security is under the look, and that's the security company that deals with our Prime Minister. So hopefully everything's all right there.
like, hopefully.
We'll soon find out, I guess.
It also deals with the offshore detention camps,
Yeah.
and a lot of people talking about how ethical is that, and now they're putting their money in some very interesting places.
It's a great. If I was a professional journalist, I'd be wanting to get my hand on all of these documents. It's so exciting. It's an exciting time for people.
Thanks for that.
No worries, guys. I'll be back later with What the What.
Yeah,
Thanks,
stay
Lana.
tuned for What the What, and we might have some special music for that as well.
Maybe. Yeah, hopefully. Now we're moving on to our first big story. There's been a royal commission, countless articles and protests against black deaths in custody. One of the most prominent cases in recent years was the death of Miss Julika Dew, and there was recently an inquiry into her death. Ahmed spoke to her uncle Sean Harris.
Black death in custody has been a long issue in Australian society, hitting crescendo over 20 years ago, the Royal Commission. However, since, numbers of Indigenous incarceration rates has doubled. What's happening to the victims of black deaths in custody? A victim who's been the face of black deaths in custody in the past 18 months has been the late Miss Julika Dew, who died in 2014 from pneumonia, a preventable death. And reports from the coroners saying that officers in custody didn't believe her cries for help, saying she was faking. There's been an inquiry into her death that's been ongoing for the past few weeks. I spoke to her uncle, Sean Harris.
Hello? Yeah, it's me, Sean.
About the process.
Yeah, well, it's been pretty stressing and draining and exhausting, and we're actually glad to have it over with, especially after it was put off for a few months or so. Personally, I've had to travel so much. I've travelled 4,000 k's in the last year and a half or so, from east to west and back and forth again to help spread for my niece's campaign for justice. So, to actually have the inquest over is a bit of a relief, yeah. But that being said, we shouldn't be here having to have an inquest because Julika should still be here. Simple antibiotics would have ensured that she'd still be alive. But deprivation of liberty that was inflicted on her by the supposed government carers while she was in detained in custody is just criminal neglect and malpractice, misconduct, etc., etc. There's so much ways that Julika was dealt the wrong hand. So many.
But how does so many people institutionally fail someone?
She was apparently, there was rumors going around that she was janky coming down. So apparently she didn't even get her temperature taken over 3 days, maybe only once, from the top of my head. Because health staff heard rumours that she was a druggie. They didn't bother taking her temperature. That's part of the police taking on the role as medical professionals. That's a big reason why black people die in custody, because they're denied their medication, medical attention, their basic human rights. Julika's human rights, her basic human rights, were severely neglected, and now she's not here because of it.
The CCTV footage wasn't allowed to be put into evidence in the inquiry. Sean thinks this was a mistake, saying the emotion of the footage would have changed the face of the inquiry.
Because that footage is so powerful, so deep and shocking, and it actually proves to the world exactly how us black people in Australia are still being treated. And it directly incriminates so many parties that were involved. I think the global backlash alone will be tremendous as well, because the whole world knows about Jalika and they're starting to hear about Jalika more and more, and black deaths in custody in Australia as a whole. In this day and age, we have the technology to put our voices out there overseas, internationally, which is what we've had to do.
How do you keep large organizations and institutions accountable? Sean says his biggest asset is social media and the internet to drum up global support.
She needs to rest in peace of at least some sort, because she was treated so badly, mistreated and neglected and deprived of her liberty by so many people on so many levels, and somebody has to be held accountable. History shows that no one has been held accountable and charged of any death in custody since, well, pretty much Invasion Day. So it's a massive fight in itself for us to get a conviction for Jalika. But we won't stop, because there are so many people who were involved and have still freshly blood-stained hands. They need to be held accountable. There's no question about anything. The whole world knows, and the whole world are starting to talk even more about the suppression of the CCTV footage. We have global activists who are drawing comparisons to Sandra Bland. There's the Say Her Name movement as well, the Black Lives Matter movement.
That was Amit Yusa talking to Sean, uncle of Jalika Du, who died in police custody. It's 1:11 right now. You're listening to Upstart Live. Amit, how did you get into contact with Sean Harris?
Around late 2014, I went to the Redfern 10 Embassy, and that's when I first met him. And that was when he started traveling around, all around. He went to Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne. The miles were up even then, and he was talking to me about his niece, Jalika, and I already knew about the story a little bit, but it became more real when I talked to him, and I kept in contact. I kept in contact with him for the past couple, like we'll say a year now, and yeah, talking to him, he's been so tirelessly fighting to get a sense of justice for his niece, and what got me was the not even getting the CCTV camera footage in the inquiry, and why that was.
Yeah, that's so is he still going around the country?
When I talked to him, he wasn't moved. The following day, he's going to go on an 8-hour bus trip back to Perth to get the end of the inquiry, which is on today. So,
yeah. Oh, interesting.
Miles on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and now we're going to be talking about refugees and a really interesting initiative done by Southern Cross.
Red Cross?
Red Cross, not Southern Cross. Why am I saying Southern Cross? You know,
the stars are
stars
helping out the refugees.
Yeah. But anyway, Red Cross, who are doing amazing work. Life in Australia is a new podcast created by Red Cross. It's aimed to help young refugees settle into their new life. Red Cross volunteers have been in studio creating a new podcast that gives advice to young people who have arrived in Australia as refugees or seeking protection. One of our reporters, Sasha Dotry, spoke with Ben Atticus Quinton, the Life in Australia podcast project officer, and here is Sasha with the report.
If you're listening to this, well done. You found our new podcast from the Australian Red Cross. It's called Connect, Learn, Share, Life in Australia. These are stories and advice from young people with asylum seeker and refugee backgrounds living in Australia.
Moving to a new country and rebuilding your life is not only daunting but also difficult. It can be scary for those with a different language and culture and for those that have arrived in difficult circumstances or are seeking a safer life. Red Cross recently, with the help of podcast project officer Beth Atkinson-Quinton, put together a fortnightly podcast called Life in Australia. Now, its main focus is to help young people in the community transition and adapt to living within Australia. In the case of the Red Cross, they're using social media and podcasting as a platform to give young refugees a voice and a place to go when they're unsure or just need to hear there are more people dealing with the same issues and challenges. It is a more relatable way of getting information out to young people, and it follows the trends of accessing this kind of information straight from a smartphone. In each fortnightly episode of the podcast, young people who experience the transition to living in Australia share their stories and give advice on subjects such as housing, education, and health. This is not only beneficial for the young refugees, but also for Australians who, when listening, can understand the pressures and challenges that people may face in a new country.
Well, hi Beth, thanks for joining me today. For our listeners, I want to get the word out about the Red Cross's new podcast service that you've created for young refugees that have recently moved to Australia.
Yes, so a little bit about the project. So the Life in Australia podcast, it aims to create youth-friendly podcasts that are drafted by and for young people from asylum seeker and refugee backgrounds, and it was created to provide young people with a little bit more information that's aimed to assist in adjusting to life in Australia. So it's a really practical podcast that kind of gives life skills and advice. And the first 6 podcasts that we've created, or the first 6 episodes of the podcast, the English podcast, are about housing, education and health.
I started volunteering and looking and talking with different people. I found out so many things that today that I do, and still there are people out there that think the same thing, that my resources are limited and I'm not allowed. And you find this sort of stuff once you get out of your house, once you get moving, and once you start knocking every door and you let them know what I want to do, let them know and ask them, how can I do this thing, how can I do that thing. If they can't really help you, if you come to Red Cross, for example, you ask them, I don't have the right to study, but I really want to study, how can you help me? And they actually surely know about different things out there, and they let you know, well, this is the university, you can do this online, you can do this, and you can go and join this organization. They actually provide this sort of stuff.
An excerpt there from the Life Australia podcast.
This project has been based out of Melbourne. We hope, actually I can't speak on behalf of the Red Cross, but it'd be awesome if in future that it could, it could start being created in other areas of Australia. But for the moment, it's very much a Melbourne-based project. All of the recordings have been done between North Melbourne, Carlton and Dandenong.
Oh, great. And with the participation of people, I mean, how does the process go? Do you have certain people in mind that volunteer themselves to discuss things, or is something that I guess that a lot of people want to get involved in?
The recruitment process was really interesting because I suppose this is a pilot project. I suppose with any project you do, it always takes longer than you think it will.
Yeah, for sure.
So with recruitment, we just kind of put the word out to a lot of people that were involved previously with the Red Cross, that currently involved with the Red Cross. We also sent it around to organisations provide services like the Red Cross, like the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, and organisations like that, to try and find participants that would be keen. So they kind of came from a whole bunch of different places.
Is there any sort of social media campaigning that you do as part of the project that gets the word out?
Yeah, so the Australian Red Cross Media Department they've put a communications plan together, and so it's been promoted through all of our social media channels, so on Facebook and Twitter, and the podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And it's also been we've been lucky that it's been plugged through some of the organisations that do provide similar services to the Red Cross.
Oh, that's awesome. And do you find that it's getting a lot more hits the more it carries on each week, or?
Yeah, I think that's the nature of how, media making works. Like it kind of gains a little bit of traction and people tell other people. But our main target audience is, of course, the young people from Sikh and refugee backgrounds, so that hopefully it can make their transition to life a little bit easier.
When I came here for the first time, I had only a few friends outside of school, and it was like really hard to get in touch with someone, and basically I couldn't speak really well English and I was feeling really embarrassed in the class how to communicate with the guys. And I finally, after a month, I find a friend. Then from him I met his friend to my friend. Then I had 3 friends. At the end of the year I had 6-7 friends in school. The next year I had like 20 friends, and I was talking with everyone and saying hello, and it helps me to bring the people close to me, and it helps you in everything, so to go out with them and get up with the sports and things. And I was asking the guys, hey, what's your favorite sports? And he goes like, oh, I like soccer. I said, yeah, I play soccer in different clubs. I was like feeling it's my home country and I have my own friends here.
Without creating too much mayhem, but if the listeners wanted to get involved or anything like that, is that a possibility?
That's a really great question. I think that definitely if they did to contact the Red Cross, then they can definitely put them in touch with us for sure. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
No, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
That was Sasha Doty talking to Beth Atkinson Quinton about her Life in Australia podcast for refugees coming to the country. Also helpful to new people to Australia. If you want more information on the Red Cross's refugee podcasts, you can visit the website at www.redcross.org.au. It's 1:21. You're listening to Upstart Live with me, Lisa Burke, and
me, Ahmed Yusuf. Remember, we are here every week from Friday at 1 p.m. from our studios in Latrobe. Don't forget to tune in on upstart.net.au and find our social media channels. We're on Twitter at Upstart Magazine and also on Instagram and Snapchat Upstart Magazine. Thanks. Now going into our next story. Last weekend, Melbourne played host to the city's first ever Halal Expo, which unfortunately became the latest battleground in race and religion that has marred Melbourne's reputation as a multicultural capital. Our reporter Kurt was there and spoke to the event's organisers and to onto the protesters to get a better understanding of the issue.
Walk down your supermarket and it's impossible to miss the official certifications that adorn food labelling. From organic to gluten-free to Australian-made, consumers expect to know more about the food products they buy. Nothing, however, has caused much controversy as halal certification. From a Senate inquiry last year to public rallies this year, halal certification has become the big-ticket issue for a broad coalition of community and political groups opposed to Islam in Australia. The controversy led to Australia's Muslim community hosting Melbourne's first ever halal expo at the Melbourne Flemington Showgrounds last weekend, to help educate the public about the halal industry and to provide a platform for halal suppliers to sell their goods to the public. Syed Atiq Al-Hassan is the founder director of the festival.
The objective of these events, which are going to be held every year, is to create awareness among the people about the halal food and services and halal lifestyle, and create awareness and educate the people outside the Islamic community to know about what halal means for them, for the Islamic community, and why it is important.
Put simply, food has been recognized as halal means it is fit for consumption by Muslims under their religion. In other words, it doesn't contain blood, alcohol or any meat products which have not been slaughtered in the correct religious manner. Supporters say having halal food certified opens up lucrative Islamic markets overseas for producers and makes our food cheaper at checkout. For the anti-halal movement, however, it's the thin edge of the wedge, a sign of what they see as the growing Islamification of Australia. At the event, food and goods are sold and children enjoy rides. Unfortunately, what was intended as a peaceful event doesn't turn out that way. Standing outside the expo, a group of 20 of halal's most voiceless critics are keen to make a stand. Dressed in t-shirts that compare refugees to rapists and mock Islamic clothing, the anti-halal group ridicules the festival and those who are attending. Not before long, a group dressed in black from Melbourne's Antifa anti-racist groups attacked the anti-halal protesters, leaving several people injured and one person hospitalised. It caps off a weekend in Melbourne where other anti-Islamic groups unfurled an anti-mosque banner at an AFL match, which led one of Melbourne's leading newspapers to question whether Melbourne's tolerant multicultural identity was under threat. Nick Foulkes is a Senate candidate for the Party for Freedom at the next federal election, and the organiser of the anti-halal protest.
Today we held a demonstration against the halal sort of industry in Australia, opposed to Sharia law and all the nasty facets of Islam in Australia. But definitely the main for us, the protest today was against animal cruelty, and we oppose ritual slaughter, halal ritual slaughter, we absolutely oppose. So we were here for that, and it's just a shame that Antifa turned up, and it's just sort of exploded into violence. So it was just They had their faces covered, they wore like black tracksuit pants and just sort of concealed their identity with masks and that, and they just attacked us.
When asked whether his rape t-shirt is offensive, Nick is unrepentant.
Do you think shirts are quite provocative, that there's a bit of a generalisation?
Oh, it might be for some people, but I find this provocative when I see all these Muslims coming in, give them welfare, criminal behaviour and that sort of thing, you know? Yeah, let's go.
No problem, thanks mate.
As far-right and far-left groups fight amongst each other, the Muslim community is increasingly finding it more difficult to promote its positive message of tolerance amongst bickering. For food producers, halal certification is a straightforward business practice. The manufacturer pays for an inspection to gain halal certification, which in turn opens up lucrative markets for Australian exporters. A Senate inquiry last year found the market was worth $8.5 billion to the Australian economy. Sam Daniels is a farm worker and a manufacturer of camel milk. 80% of his client base is from Australia's East African Muslim community. He says that having halal certification has helped his business grow, but there is still so much misunderstanding about the issue.
I feel there's a lot of people that misunderstand what halal certification means and what the halal procedures are. So it's good for people to better understand what being halal certified actually means. We got halal certified so that Islamic people could be satisfied that our milk is halal certified and our process meets their standards.
Lena Shakur is operating a cake stall at Expo and believes fighting and protests are unwarranted. She sees the Expo as a way for her to promote and gain business and believes that there is no reason anyone should object that.
I'm not too worried about the fact that there's 10 protesters out there chanting and screaming. I know the wider Australian community is not like that, and like I said before, most businesses here are small homegrown businesses that all they want to do is promote their products, and we found a market here we can promote our product to, so yeah, that doesn't worry me.
We say Bismillah, when we dance we say Alhamdulillah, when we drink we say Bismillah, when we dance we say Alhamdulillah.
And thanks for that, Kurt, for that story. But let's just talk about that, the thing about halal. Because I remember there was a story, I think in the Weekly, maybe last year, about some of the statistics about the halal industry produces around 60,000 jobs in Australia. And produces multi-billion dollar industry.
It's interesting that it's such a big industry. This is the first halal expo that this big city has had, and also that it caused such controversy for such a normal event, rather.
Yeah, I spoke to someone who actually went to the expo a few days ago, and they said they were surprised there'd be any violence because inside the event there was just a bunch of families and children. It was kind of like a festival kind of atmosphere, opposed to thinking there'd be anything of like any malice or any kind of violence inside. But that's life, I guess.
Yeah.
You're listening to Upstart Live. It's 1:29, and we're going into a new segment we're producing here. We're going to be looking at some of the stuff on the web. We got Upstart editor Rudy Etzel.
Hi Ahmed, how are you?
I'm good. So what you got for us?
Today I've got a couple of things that I want to chat about. I've just put up 2 sports articles today that I'm quite fond of. They're both by one of my sports staff writers named Chris De Silva. One is about Lauren Jackson, and he's basically, because she retired last week, and he's basically suggesting that she's the best basketballer Australia's ever produced, and it's hard to argue with that. Her achievements in the game far outstrip any of the male players that we've produced thus far. And he also produced a piece asking whether or not this is the best season that the A-League's ever seen. I know you'd have some feelings on that, Ahmed.
I guess it's one of the best seasons. I remember. Do you remember the Raha season, the Marcus Raha season?
Yep.
That for me was the season, at least for me, the pinnacle of the A-League. You had a great Melbourne Victory team. You had like Brisbane were a bit faltering, but it came back, and then you had Western Sydney emerge from nothing, and Central Coast Mariners were a well-oiled machine. Graham Arnold at the helm, and like that season for me was one of the best seasons because I feel like this season you've had players which you didn't have like a breakout star.
Yeah, but I feel like the standard of the league is the best it's ever been. There's been more fans come through than before in general, and all that's going through without great performances from the 2 big clubs, Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC. So I think I'm with Chris. I think it's the best we've ever seen. I also had a great article from Catherine McLeod this week. She was looking at egg donation in Australia. Women are allowed to donate eggs, but only as an altruistic measure. They're not allowed to get money for egg donation, and that's across the Western world. Women can, in other countries, America specifically, can get paid for their eggs. And she just was sort of querying why that's the case. When women produce eggs and shed them, why not? Why can't they make money off them?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you can make money off eggs in other countries, but donation, widely you can't make money off blood donation in most places or organ donation. So why would you make money off egg donation?
Well, I don't see why you shouldn't make money off blood or organs either. If you've got these things, why not sell them?
Actually, I was listening to a podcast recently about this very thing about like organ donations. This is pretty much US centric. It was American Life. They were talking about how when you donate a kidney, if you have any mention of any kind of monetary or favors that someone's going to produce to you, it's denied, automatically denied, which was interesting. And one of the people talking about this was this woman who was going to donate her kidney to her friend.
Mm-hmm.
Her friend was in a critical situation, and she couldn't give the kidney because she was asking if a friend could do something like look after the lawn or do some sort of menial favors while she's incapacitated and recovering.
She didn't get the kidney because of this?
No, she couldn't give the kidney because that broke regulation, and the friend ended up dying, unfortunately.
Oh,
that is really interesting.
It's heavy.
And it's interesting that it's something that the two of them are both agreeing upon. It's not as though one is taking advantage of the other.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wonder how Kerry Packer's helicopter pilot got around those stringent laws. The other story, my favourite one of the week, has one of the politics writers, Caitlin Leggett, wrote an article about ad blocking apps. It's called Ad Blocking Apps Blocking Revenue. And she unearthed a stat that ad blockers cost news publications $22 billion in 2015. And the New York Times has just recently installed software that I suppose blocks people using those apps from reading their content. She interviewed Nick Dunlop, who's the head of advertising operations at Crikey, and he said that around 13% of their users block ads, and that if that increases, free sites will cease to exist. And I found what I thought was interesting about that is that as journo students, like, I don't really think twice about blocking ads personally. I don't know if you guys are the same. Do you use blockers?
I don't really think about it, but also we're talking to Upstart editor Rudy Etzel. Remember, you can check out all these stories that we're talking about. These are the biggest and best stories from the past week on upstart.net.au, and on Twitter you can find them at Upstart Magazine, and also find them on Snapchat and Instagram, Upstart Magazine. But like, I don't actually think twice about it. I just hate ads, but I feel like the thing that's happening now is they've got to be smarter with ads. They've got to, like, news organization. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the way podcasts with ads is they make the hosts back announce ads. They make the ads a bit fun.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably put some music under the ad, and I guess what happens then is native advertising, and BuzzFeed do a lot of that, and they're quite successful in it.
BuzzFeed are an interesting case study for mine. They have excellent journalists. Their US investigative team is probably one of the best that there is, certainly in the digital realm. And a lot of that is funded by, as you said, the clickbait stuff that they do about, remember these characters from the OC when you were 12 or whatever. And that's an interesting one for me, because that's, as you said, that's a form of advertising by itself in its own way. And that's the challenge that these publications will have to face in the future. The New York Times quote was, the best things in life aren't free. You currently have an ad block installed. Advertising helps fund our journalism.
Exactly, and I guess that's the question we're going to have to ask. Does native advertising and advertising, in a sense, does the means outweigh the,
does it detract from
the journalism?
The journalism, for sure.
And thanks for your time, Rudy. And remember, go on upstart.net.au. That was Rudy Etzel, editor of Upstart. And remember, you are listening to Upstart Live. We're here every Friday from La Trobe University Studios. It is 1:36 p.m. And we're going into our next story.
Yeah, so there's been a growing conversation about the conditions of international students in the workplace. I am an international student myself. It's a very interesting story for me, especially after ABC Four Corners and Fairfax Media's reporting on 7-Eleven's treatment of their employees. Does this exploitation of international students happen elsewhere, and what do they think? Ahmed Yusuf has a story for us.
One of Australia's greatest resources is its educational system. The high number of international students that travel from far and wide to study in Australia. But what's happening to them when they get here?
Tonight on Four Corners, as 7-Eleven goes into damage control, we expose the wage scam at the heart of the multi-billion-dollar convenience store empire.
An investigation by ABC Four Corners, Fairfax Media, found systemic corruption and exploitation to one of Australia's greatest economic commodities, international students. I wondered, is this limited to 7-Eleven? Are international students also being exploited?
Nina Irina.
This is Nina. She's
National President of the Council of International Students Australia.
I first asked Nina if she was exploited.
I've been exploited once for a couple of weeks in one of the, cafes.
She didn't know she was being underpaid at the time. I wondered how that made her feel.
I basically came and then had a bit of training, doing the normal productive work for a couple of days. Didn't know that you're actually supposed to get paid if you're doing, productive work during those days. Right now, I guess I felt like at the same time, I don't really, I understand that, yes, there's that part of me that, I was deceived and I shouldn't be treated that way. And if I knew that I was exploited, I would probably say something to the employers. But putting myself in other people's shoes, it's really, again, I wouldn't know how to say, or I wouldn't even dare to speak up sometimes if it's that desperation.
The few jobs that are available to international students are often those in their diasporic communities. And that's where some of the exploitation happens.
The quick brown dog jumped over a lazy fox. I think that's what the quick brown dog did. I mean, really not even impressive. The quick brown fox should jump over like a fence if you want to impress people. I'm just saying. Like,
So-
it's a bit of an
so what's your
underachieving
name?
fox. My name Ken.
This is Ken. He knows all too well about being unpaid in the workplace. But for him, his experience hit pretty hard.
When I first came to Melbourne, I thought I'd be able to find a job the same way I did in Singapore, in Indonesia, in the States. But in Melbourne, it really wasn't like that. And I worked at a Chinese restaurant, which I'm not going to name here, but I worked at a Chinese restaurant which paid me $10 an hour. And that's way below the minimum wage. Not to mention, like, based on my age as well, but it's way below the minimum wage. And when I brought this up, no one sided with me. And it seems really strange to me that I would come to a foreign country, work in a restaurant with people who have experienced the same experiences that I have, come from the same cultural background, and yet, instead of sympathizing, they decide to exploit you. And they decide, because they know how hard it is for you to find a job. And they know how hard it is to make a living, and you don't have a choice. You don't get to put it off and decide that I'm gonna wait for something better, because you have to make that rent. You have to make those bills, and they know the position they're in, and that's why they know you're vulnerable and that you will take any job that will pay you.
Why do people speak about workplace exploitation when it comes to international students? Why don't we see the same sort of outrage that's shown to exploitation that happens in faraway countries?
What I find really, really interesting about this is that I come from a, being exploited point of view, whereas if we're looking at your local Australian residents who don't tend to experience this as often, that they don't really think twice about it. And like, we live in an age where people worry about the fur that you wear, they worry about where their shoes are made, and they worry about, whether their coffee beans are ethically sourced. But perfectly fine heading to a dumpling restaurant on a Friday night to celebrate with friends and have a few mojitos afterwards, whatever your lifestyle is, knowing that those people who work in the dumpling restaurants are exploited, are people just like them, possibly university students, who are working for half the wage that they're working for and doing the same amount of work, and they have no support network to help them with.
People often ask, if you know you're being exploited, why don't you quit? Find a better job. But that's the reality afforded to some.
Because there is this feeling where, like, it's almost like you're here, you don't have much of a choice, you're walking through a desert, and this is your oasis. It doesn't matter how dirty the water is, it doesn't matter how little water there is. The point is, that is the best you can get. And how are you supposed to feel when expectation is the best you can get? Like, you're not about to complain about it.
That was Amit Yusuf reporting on international students getting exploited in the workplace, which sounds like it's quite the problem here, is it?
Yeah, definitely. And it seems to be international students that come from, that don't come from Western countries.
They don't come from Western countries.
They don't come from Western countries. And it's usually because, for example, if you go to a Chinese restaurant or other ethnic restaurants, they want to have the continuity. So they'll tap into international students that come from those areas. Mm. And what they do is, obviously, they hire them. But
do they match what the pay would be like in the countries they've come from, or is it? It's
just. I feel like I spoke to Ken and I spoke to a few other international students, and they were telling me, so for example, they work in the same restaurant or the same cafe. Mm-hmm. Say, for example, the person that grew up in Australia will make the usual kind of wage demands, but someone who's like Ken, who's come from Singapore and China, they will get markedly less.
Yeah.
And which is kind of it's a bit disheartening, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure it is. And I know it would be easy to do that as well. I mean, coming from Canada, I get paid $10 an hour at restaurants, but we make tips. So if I came here and was told that was the case here, I wouldn't question it.
Yeah, exactly. And that misinformation, I guess, is what hurts a lot of international students. And because they know this is the best they can get. And what else can they do? And also, you are listening to Upstart Live. We are live every Friday from 1 p.m. Right now it's 44 past, and we're going into our sports wrap. Our weekly wrap with, music. That's sports. Yes. Toby Chapman and Carl Humphrey, welcome.
Thanks, guys. We've got a big look at the first two rounds of the AFL season today. But firstly, Kyle, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's Friday afternoon and I'm going to sleep all weekend. I'm pretty excited.
Great. So first up, we're talking the hot and cold sides. 2 rounds of the seasons. We'll have a look at where they're at. Our first team are the Gold Coast Suns. They had a tough 2015, but they've come back with a bit of a vengeance with 2 impressive wins to start their season. Obviously, a massive part of their turnaround is a fit and firing Gary Ablett. But Rodney Eaters praised the resilience of the playing group and how they've stepped up this year.
I think the players are getting belief that they don't have to rely on Gary.
The Gary Ablett, obviously a massive issue last year going down with the shoulder injury. And we had Aaron Hall pretty much get a place last year because of injuries. And now he's the statistically second best midfielder. So massive win at Fremantle last week. So Gold Coast, keep it up. They could be anything this year.
They've been very impressive. They've got Carlton this week, which they should win, and they've got Brisbane the week after, which is they're a big chance to go 4-0. After that, they've got 2 tough games in North Melbourne and Geelong. But if they can win even one of those, then you think they might have cemented their finals chances.
I wouldn't say cement their finals chance simply because how they died a few years ago. But 5-1 is massive, and it allows them a little bit of leeway if they drop off to finish inside the top 8. But 5-1, I'd want to be going top 4 from there.
Absolutely. Onto our second team, the Western Bulldogs. They had a surprising surge up the ladder last year. They've opened their account with 2 dominant wins. They've got a tough change up next with reigning premiers Hawthorn, but a win could cement their status as potential premiership challengers.
It could. Luke Beveridge has done amazing in his short time at the Western Bulldogs. They've got a few really, really strong players like Johannisen and Hunter are playing very well this year. Their juniors, young players like the Bont and Liberatore's back, so they could be anything this year. Western Bulldogs, though, they seem, I hope they go very well. It's kind of a team you want to see do well, but unfortunately, just like 97, 98, preliminary final, it'll be a good effort this year, I reckon.
Good effort. And of course with Hawthorn this week, Coach Luke Beveridge knows better than most about how dangerous they can be when it comes to putting contending sides off the game, having been assistant coach at the Hawk for 3 years.
I don't fear it, but I've got no doubt that that's what they'll try and do. That's the professionalism and the characters within the 4 walls of the Hawthorn Football Club, and that's why it presents such a big challenge.
The Bulldogs' defence this season, they've only conceded 74 points in 2 games, and one of those games was against Fremantle. So I reckon they're a very, very good chance. Hawthorn are a high-scoring team, so if they can keep Hawthorn to, say, under 90 points, around that 100, under 90, I think they're halfway to beating them. Our last side is at the other end of the ladder with a disappointing start to their season, having lost both the Suns and Bulldogs. Ross Lyon's Fremantle side finished as minor premiers last year, but have experienced 2 tough losses against sides that they were expected to beat.
Nothing seems to be working for Fremantle at the moment. Ross Lyon tried to bring in a more attacking game plan. They look completely out of sorts with it, a completely different side. If they can't turn it around soon, you have to start thinking about potentially writing their finals chances off. Not that it seems to have Rossline too panicked at the moment as he prepares for the Western Derby.
For me, it's round 3 and there's 4 points. There's no extra reward, and worrying about losing is not going to get done. They're fierce contests, and you've got to do everything right to get across the line. We would like to get a win and get some momentum. There's no doubt about that.
So statistically, over the last 15 years or so, no side that has lost the first 2 games of the season has made the finals. So that's Fremantle at the moment. And Western Derby, if they go 0-3, it's pretty much really uphill from here. Freo's confidence is absolutely shot from their new game plan. I think what sums that up is Nat Fyfe running into open goal, stubbing his foot and kicking it behind from 15 metres. So that's pretty much sums up their season so far. David Mundy's also laid out, which hurts. He's the second best midfielder. So Freo have got to make up a little bit of personnel there. And I'm not sure how they'll do it. I reckon West Coast will absolutely belt them.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. I'm Toby Chapman. You're listening to the Friday Sports Wrap on Upstart Live. Tune in next week as we cover everything you need to know about the A-League finals. But now, we've got a special report from Jacob Joyberry on MCG security protocols following patrons unveiling an offensive banner at an AFL game last weekend.
What basic security protocols do patrons experience when bringing flags and banners into the MCG?
Well, all patrons have to go through an entry procedure before they enter the MCG. So that includes bag checks and random wanding, and that's to detect items that are either a breach of the conditions of entry or provide a safety risk for other patrons. With respect to banners and flags, they are not on their own a safety risk. Bringing them into the venue is itself permitted. They're not removed at the bag check process.
With respect to the recent issue at the Collingwood vs Richmond game where patrons from the UPF put up the banner saying, "Go Pies, stop the mosques," is there anything at all possible that the MCG would or could do to prevent further offensive banners being taken into the venue?
No, as I say, it's not an offence in itself to take a banner into the venue. The breach of the conditions of entry when you display banners that are offensive in nature for public view. So as soon as that occurs, then it's with our roving patrol and police where necessary to speak to the patrons and then remove the banner and take action. And that's exactly what occurred on Friday night. There have been some people suggest that we could check every bag and unravel the contents of every banner that's on the person. In practical terms, this clearly wouldn't work at the gate. All our patrons would be held up while there were banners being assessed and would lead to further delay upon entry. So not really a practical approach to stopping offensive material being displayed at the venue. We focus on taking down the content if we see it displayed on the day.
That was Friday Sports Wrap with Toby and Kyle, finishing with a special report from Jacob Joyberry on MCG security protocols. It's 1:52 in the afternoon. You're listening to Upstart Live with Lisa Berg and Amit Yusuf.
Hey, and Lisa, you've been out on the town recently.
Yeah, I went out last night to a comedy show.
How was it?
It was okay. It was good. It was funny.
Who'd you
at
see?
Parts. I saw a show called New Order with Sophie Hagen and a couple other comedians. But I had a chance to talk to Sophie about, this is her first time in Australia. She's from Denmark. So she just talked about about the festival and what she likes about the city.
I have a thing where I it's a principle of mine is I never lie. So everything I say on stage is 100% true. That's just my thing. There's nothing wrong with making stuff up. Some people do, some people don't. That's what I get a kick out of, because my reality is, I don't have that good of an imagination. Couldn't make any of the stuff up that I'm saying. Other people are better at that than me. So everything I say on stage is 100% true.
Cool. Compared to all the festivals that you've done, what do you like about the Melbourne Festival?
That's the thing. The Melbourne Festival, it just feels more like community. It feels like there's no pressure, because we're all hanging out in the daytime, supporting each other's shows, watching each other. Today I've seen 2 of my friends' comedy shows before I went to do mine, and there were some of my friends, other comedians in the audience tonight to support us, and this is this nice feeling of community. So we're not really competing for anything, and everyone's doing well and having a good time, which is unlike festivals, which usually there's a lot of pressure and stress and competitiveness and their awards reviews, and here it just feels like it's just having fun with comedy.
That was Sophie Hagen talking to our host, Lisa Berg. And now we're going to be going into our segment, What the What? So, Lana, what's been going on?
Yeah, a couple of good ones, as always. It blows my mind how every week I'm never in a struggle to find silly stories. So well done us for being normal. I was actually going to put this story in the news headlines. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. And it's just, the title was two boys shot in New Orleans, and they're from WA. Now, I can make a joke about this because they're in a stable condition and they're totally fine. But this story blows my mind because not only did they go to a bar at 4 a.m., go up to a stranger, ask for drugs, that's fine, you can do what you want. But at 4 a.m. and then get into a car with this stranger at 4 a.m. who they met in a bar, so surely you would have to believe that they were intoxicated at some point. And then whilst in the car ride, they were told that the drugs were going to cost a couple $100, and they're like, well, we don't want to pay that much, we don't have that much money. And they were taken to Algiers, which is a known section of New Orleans to be quite dicey. And so knowing all of this, they still refused to pay money, and which ultimately led, as the police reported, to be shot. So I think that's just a crazy story because, I don't know, drugs aren't going to cost you a tenner. You know what I mean? I don't know much about drugs. But anyway, that story kind of blew my mind. I hope they've learned that from that. 19. So
19.
Yeah, I hope they've learned from it. Anyway, whilst on the topic of New Orleans, a man is facing a possible 20 years to life in prison for allegedly stealing $30 worth of candy bars. Give the guy a break. And I was going to put some pun in there about Kit Kats and having a break, but I
saw Kit Kats when I was at school.
Yeah, well, it's $30 worth of candy. And they call it candy, which I'm sure is chocolate.
Why do they call it candy?
I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah. But I just found it absolutely ridiculous. So I looked into it a bit more. And in Louisiana, they have one of the strongest repeat offender laws in the US. And the man who allegedly stole this $30 worth of candy, his name is Jacoby Grimes, which is a good name, was charged with he'd been reported 4 other times for stealing. So this was his fifth strike, and
fifth
he was out.
candy strike.
And apparently that means life in prison. But it's worth mentioning.
Fifth candy strike. I call it candy. I should say.
You do call it
candy?
Yeah, I call it candy. All chocolate, sweet, anything. It's all candy.
Why?
I just think I should take
That's just how I was raised. I don't know.
I feel like candy is for lollies and those kind of sweets.
Lolly's not a familiar term to me either. Okay. I never say that.
Okay.
It's because you say it funny. Lolly.
All right, you're listening to Upstart Live.
Yeah. We're taking the piss out of Lisa.
The Canadian International.
It's 1:57. We're about to end our show. Thank you again, Alana,
no
for
worries, guys.
What? Some interesting headlines and stories. You can catch us back again next week, Friday from 1 p.m. Same time, same place, upstart.net.au, and you can find all the social media channels, Upstart Magazine, on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. I've been your host, Ahmed Yusuf.
I'm Lisa Burke.
And we're going to credit some of our contributors today.
Yeah.
Thank you to our executive producer, Phil
Kavakaludis.
Yeah. I didn't do that.
I have to learn to pronounce his name sometime.
I don't know. I do. Senior producer Max Robbins, sports producer Carl Humphreys, and reporters Jacob Joyberry, Toby Chapman, Alana Mazurk.
No worries.
And all our contributors today. And also our music is by Mini Coop. And our beautiful single man behind the scenes, Matt Coburn, as always.
To get me music next week.
Where was the what segment?
Yeah.
And next week, talking about next week.
Yeah, very, very exciting show next week. Make sure you tune in because it's our big launch next week. So we will be officially launching Upstart Live here at Latrobe University.
Big things happening.
Yeah.
Big things happening. And Alana, I'm looking forward to that What the What segment.
Me too.
I feel like
it's
after the
huge.
Panama Papers, after everything that happened the past week, I feel like there's going to be a few strange stories in the pipeline.
Yep. Thanks for that pressure. No worries. There'll be.
I'm sorry. Like,
It's fine. There will be. Okay. It's going to be great.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll be back next week. Same time, same place, upstart.net.au. And thank you for listening.
Woo!